Hi, Maria. Nice to see you.
Good to be here. Good to see everybody.
Excellent. We're ready to talk about Egypt tonight.
That's a place I've never been, but it's always intrigued me.
Yeah, we should probably start off with a bit of a poll. We'll find out when we do intros. And I see Marianne, who
I made it. I made it. I was determined. I made it.
determined to get into this meeting. Thank you so much for persevering.
Well, it looked so good. I had to do it.
Yeah.
I love the book too. It was fun.
Thank you. I did too. I read it when it was warm outside. So when I looked at it, I had memories of warm weather.
Feel that.
Actually, I even have a little blanket on today. Because down here, it's actually a little cool in Florida today.
Oh,
Wow.
I'm in Florida too, and it's cold. I've got a sweater on. What we think is cold.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
All by that.
We had snow this morning, so
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure many of you did. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight for our JourneyWoman book club. For those of you that I haven't met, I'm Carolyn Ray. I'm the publisher of JourneyWoman, and my co-host is Wendy, who is wearing a red shirt. And if you've been on previous book clubs, you remember Wendy used to have a cast on her arm, which is now gone. So she's ready to take over the world. Tonight we're of course talking about Egypt and the book Mistress of Nothing, which I hope you all enjoyed. I couldn't put it down personally. I really loved it. Mm-hmm. What I wanted to do was start with some introductions and just go around and hear where you're all from. We have a guest speaker joining us tonight, Allison, who I don't see yet, but I'm sure she'll be on shortly, who's going to tell us a bit about Egypt and what's happening there. And her company is AAA Holidays, and they do women-friendly experiences. So she's just going to fill us in on what's happening in Egypt and talk about some of those things. And I'm just letting people in here as everybody joins. And if you feel the need to have a glass of wine or anything, that's totally cool. So
I already did.
I'm trying to be good and wait until, but anyways, so let's start with some intros. And what I'll do is I'll just say your name, and hopefully there might be two of you, but I'll try and say an initial. And if you could let us know where you're calling from, and if you've been to Egypt before. And then my next question is, if there's anywhere at all you could be in the world right now, where would it be? So I'm going to start with Joan P. up in my right-hand corner.
Hi, I'm from a suburb of Toronto, Canada. I have been to Egypt for a short visit, Alexandria, Cairo, and the pyramids of Giza. And where would I want to be right now? I think I'd like to be in Italy because it is so quiet.
Lovely. Jan?
Oh, hi. I'm Jan. I live in Seattle. I've never been to Egypt. Not sure if I really want to go, but yeah, where would I want to be? I've never been to Portugal, and I think I'd like to go there.
Marianne, what about you?
I'm from Clearwater, Florida, and I've never been to Egypt. I've traveled widely, but I haven't been there. I'd like to be in New Zealand right now.
I'm just going to ask folks to mute if they're not talking, if you don't mind. Like someone has a TV on. Susan.
Me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm in New York. And I'd love to be in Iceland. We lost that trip to Iceland because of our COVID. We couldn't travel, but we'll get there someday.
Absolutely. Have you been to Egypt?
No, I have not. I think I want to go. I'm not sure. After reading this book, maybe more so, actually.
That's great. Thanks for joining.
Thank
Jane, I might have muted you, Jane.
I can unmute. I don't know where I'd like to be. I'm pretty happy being here right now. It's safe and comfortable, and soon I'll be able to go everywhere I want again. I have never been to Egypt, but behind me is the Luxor gates.
Yeah, you always have great backgrounds.
I try. Thank you.
Let's see Maria.
Hi, I'm Maria from Long Island, New York. I've never been to Egypt, and right now I'm kind of itching to go into Manhattan. I'm about 35 minutes away, and that's kind of, I would just like to walk around. I haven't been there in many months, but I heard one of my favorite jazz clubs is opening up, so that's where I kind of want to go right now.
Close to home.
Close to home, yeah.
Joy?
I'm from Winnipeg, and I think by Florida standards it would be frigid, but by our standards it's balmy today. It's +2. I've never been to Egypt. It's a place I would like to visit. If I could be anywhere right now, I would like to be in the mountains in Tibet.
Beautiful. Lovely, thank you. Shirley.
I'm from Legislature, Quebec, and I've been to Egypt several times. And in fact, I first read this book when I had just been to Abu Simbel, so it was timely. And if I could be somewhere today, I'd like to be somewhere in Africa.
That's great. Mary?
Hi, I'm Mary Clark. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. I've been through Egypt en route to a cruise, so it was a brief trip in Cairo and Alexandria. And if I could be anywhere, I'd be on a beach somewhere listening to the waves.
Nice, Mary. Thank you for joining us. I know this is probably your 10th Zoom call today. Maria, Maria P.
Yes, I'm from just south of Vancouver, Canada. Yes, I have been to Egypt. It's a rather convoluted story, actually. I spent some time in Egypt after flying back to join my cruise after my mother's funeral. And so I spent 4 days on the Red Sea, and then we went to Luxor and all of that stuff. And that was just at the beginning of COVID. And then Israel wouldn't let us in because they didn't believe that Egypt didn't have COVID, which they did really. And so that was kind of the end of our cruise.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I did leave you a message earlier on today. I didn't get through the book because I'm doing some volunteer work at the moment, which is totally consuming me. But I thought I would listen in anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Glad you could join us. Dina?
I'm from Tacoma. Although that would be fun. I wouldn't mind going. And I missed out on my trip to Croatia and Eastern Europe this last fall. But for right now, the idea of a warm beach sounds absolutely wonderful. So wherever that might be. I was in a nice one in Thailand once. That was beautiful. I'd go back there.
Lovely. Yeah, I'm with you. Beaches all the way. I am not a winter girl. Randy, how are you?
How am I? Well, I'm in Philadelphia. I don't know if that tells you anything, but and it's freezing here. I enjoyed the book a lot. I've never been to Egypt, and The book did definitely, I mean, I've always been interested. The book definitely stirred my interest more in going. And I have a long list of places I would love to be, any place but here, and had it not been for COVID, I would be heading to Central or South America. So it would be nice to be doing what I had been hoping to do. So hopefully sometime in the next year.
Yep, it's gonna happen. Patricia.
Hi, I'm from San Antonio, Texas, and yes, I've been to Egypt. The best thing about my trip to Egypt, it was in 2016, which was right after they had reopened, and so there was not a lot of tourists. I mean, we went to Luxor with, hardly any crowds. It was great. So that was the best thing about my trip to Egypt, is that there were no crowds. If I could be anywhere right now, anywhere would be nice. But I was researching a trip to France this afternoon, so I'll have to throw out the Bordeaux.
That sounds good too.
Mhm.
All right. And who have I missed? Peggy.
Hi, I'm from New Jersey. I have been to Egypt in 2007. A friend of mine said, "Do you want to go to Egypt? My daughter's school is running a trip and they need more people." I'm like, when else is somebody going to ask me if I can go to Egypt? So I went. And the best thing about this book was recognizing the names and the places, because included was a trip down or up the Nile, and it was lovely. It was lovely. The big thing on where I'd like to be is anywhere in Asia. I haven't been and I want to go.
Nice. Thank you. Lou?
Okay. Well, I'm from Winnipeg, Canada, right in the very center of Canada, and same city as Joy, and same book club as Joy. So we were talking about this when our book club met this morning, or this afternoon rather, and decided that this would be an interesting group to join.
Oh, I'm so glad you did. And how kind of cliche that both of you know each other being from Winnipeg. That's great. You're reinforcing a Canadian stereotype.
Yes, yes.
But that's okay. Margie.
Hi there. I'm bundled up and cold, but I'm from Toronto. In hearing the conversation around people who've gone to Egypt, I've just gone into my file. And so I was in Egypt in June of 2007, which seems like a lifetime ago. And I went to Egypt out of Israel. And at the time, I was told upon arrival in Israel not to have Israel stamp my passport because I would be going into Egypt. And so they stamped a little piece of paper, put it in my passport. I went from Israel to Egypt and I was told there would be no problem. So at the time, who knows what was going on, but it was truly an amazing trip. Lots of memories, lots of art. The Nile was amazing. Luxor was the place they spent a little bit of time. And where would I want to be right now? Anywhere but Toronto, anywhere where there is COVID. But I would really love to be beside the water, walking on the sand.
Nice. And then Marian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
For those of you that don't know, Marian is one of our wonderful moderators on our Facebook group.
I try.
You do a great job.
So I'm in Edmonton, Alberta, and it's snowing like crazy, and it's bitterly cold, and I would like to be on an ocean somewhere, anywhere, but I'm not, so I read. And I've been through Israel to Egypt 3 times. The first time I was 16 and I wasn't allowed, I was refused entry into Egypt because I'm Jewish and they wouldn't let me in. And then when I was 29, I took my son to Israel for his bar mitzvah. And then we went into Egypt and they let us in. But once again, they wouldn't let us, we couldn't stamp our passport. They gave us a separate visa to get in. And then the third time I went with a group, and it brought back a lot of memories reading this book, because nowadays the separation between high society women and low society women doesn't exist that much anymore, and women are treated a lot better now. So I was quite interested in this book. So there you go. Here I am.
Thank you. And I can't see a name on the
Lisa?
Lisa.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to unmute. There we go.
How are you?
Hi.
So I'm Lisa. So I'm actually the person you sent me a message yesterday to see if I could join.
Oh, good.
So hello, everybody. So my name is Lisa Tejeda. Unfortunately, I had issues in here, maybe what you requested everybody to say when they were speaking.
Oh, just where you're calling from, and have you been to Egypt, and where would you like to be if you could be anywhere in the world right now?
So I actually live in New Jersey. I'm originally from Dominican Republic. I went to Egypt in 2016. I went by myself, but found a group, like to join a group. So I arrived by myself, but then joined a group. We were a group of 8 people, which was perfect. We spent 8 nights there. We went to Aswan, we went to Luxor, Cairo, Hurghada, and it was perfect. It was a great time of the year. It was October. So it was warm and hot, but not overwhelming. And where I would like to be, I'm actually where I would like to be. Because of the pandemic, I couldn't visit my mom. And I just landed already exactly a month ago. So I'm in Dominican Republic right now. And this weekend, we're gonna go to the beach, and we're enjoying the good weather. So when I heard all of you mentioning beach, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I should say that.
We all just want to come see
there. So it's really, luckily it's not as hot right now. It was very humid at the beginning, like not the kind of hot you would like, I'm certain. But now it's getting nice because of course it's November. But yeah, being from a country that it's summer all year round, I never appreciated summer until I moved to the States and realized how lucky I was to never wear sweaters and scarves. Of course, I liked it at the beginning. It was like so nice, but it's definitely nice to be here for, and I'll stay here until January because there's no point of being back home right now with the pandemic and all.
Yep. Yeah. Well, we're all jealous of you, believe me. And Allison, hello. Allison is our expert speaker tonight on Egypt. How are you doing?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. I'm in Albany, New York, upstate New York. Snow started flying yesterday afternoon, and today was cold. So my kids have been riding their bikes to school for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and that's over now. But yeah, if I could be anywhere, I think I share a lot of your sentiments that anywhere except home. I've been traveling the world avidly for my whole adult life, working in the tourism industry, particularly developing tour products and trips. So this is the longest I've ever had to stay home in my whole adult life. And I think some of you probably feel the same. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. So I'm going to turn it over to Wendy, but I just want to remind you that we have a survey on our website for books for our 2021 book club, which we're going to continue doing this. So every month, I think it's the 3rd Wednesday of every month, we're going to stick with that all through next year. So if you have any suggestions, you can either email me or just go to the website and you'll see it's right on our homepage when you can put in some suggestions. And then I hope in about 2 weeks, we'll send the whole list out to everybody and you can start planning for next year and get organized. So that's my plan anyways. So Wendy, I'm gonna turn it over to you and let you get started.
Excuse me, could
Okay,
I?
I'm Wendy, and I live in Palm Coast, Florida, northern Florida. I've never been to Egypt, and I don't know, Lisa, I love the beaches in Dominican Republic. I think they're the best beaches in the world. So I would put in a place that would maybe be one place I'd like to be right now. But I also like to be, I'd like to be in Greece. I haven't been to Greece yet, and it's on my next list. So, but let's start talking about a little bit about the book. For those of you who are new to the book club, it doesn't matter whether you read the book or not. Please feel free to listen, join in as you need. We usually start out, I talk a little bit about the author, and then we'll talk a little bit about our favorite parts of the book, and then get into some more meatier questions that the book brings up. Now, the author is Kate Pullinger, and she's actually a Canadian citizen. She was born in British Columbia, and she started in school in Montreal at McGill, and only made it about a year and a half, and she decided that was it. School wasn't for her, and she left and started working in copper mines. So talking about, going from academia to being in the copper mines, she went to the copper mines to make money, to save money so she could travel. And that's what she did. And I envy her in that, that she actually was one of those people that dropped out, made money, and traveled the world. She ended up in England, where she lives today. And she's married and has a couple of children. This book has won a number of awards. It won the Governor General's Literary Award for Fiction, which is one of Canada's highest literary prizes. And it took her over 10 years to write it. Okay, so this was not a quick book for her. She took a lot of time to write it. She went to Egypt several times during the writing process. And for those of you who may not be aware, it is based on the real life of Lady Duff Gordon and her maid. And Lady Duff, when we look at, Lady Duff published a number of books, one in her letters from Egypt. And up until the book that we've read for this book talk, up until the marriage, is all factually based. So all of those early things are all based factually on what she was able to derive from Lady Gordon. And then after the marriage, in reality, she kind of dropped out of sight. And so nobody really knows what happens to the maid after that. And that's where she took literary license at that point. Okay. But it is based at least partially on the life with Lady Gordon. So I usually start with some of my favorite sections of the book, and then I open up to some of your favorite sections. And I'm going to read a little part. Yeah.
Can I add to that? Because
sure,
there's a little bit more about apparently the husband. He was for real, but
yes.
And the family, but they lived in Alexandria, not Cairo. So the story actually took place in Alexandria, from what I found.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Okay. Now, my favorite section of the book came fairly early, and maybe it's because I liked the lightheartedness of it. I think when I travel the world, I don't like to be burdened with issues, right? I like to give all my issues away when I travel. And so my favorite section was fairly early, and it's actually during Ramadan. And it's for the first time that Omar is joining them for dinner. And I'll read a little part of it. It says, I lit the candles while Omar brought the food into the salon on a large silver tray that he set upon a low stool, and we three sat on cushions around it. We had both become accustomed to eating the Egyptian manner, using the right hand only to scoop up rice and beans with the delicious herbed and salted bread that he makes. We drank lemonade and tea and toasted each other and all our best qualities. My lady told jokes more often than not. We'd have to explain the punchline to Omar, which would prove even more amusing. We'd laugh and shout, and every once in a while, I'd allow my lady to persuade me to do my impression of a dancing girl, whose performance we had witnessed in Edfu. I don't know why or how this had become my party trick, but it had. Dancing for an audience, however small and familiar, no one in all of England would have believed me to be capable of such a thing. And the most particular thing was I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enormously. It was a very bad impression. I was clumsy and slow on my feet, but it never failed to make us all roar. My lady and Omar reclined on their cushions and they applauded me. That was my favorite because it just that shows that, and it goes on to talk about how, they kind of had become relaxed and so familiar with each other and maybe had started blurring those class lines. But to me, I was just thinking when I read that part the first time, I thought, oh, I wish I could be there, sitting on one of those cushions and laughing and enjoying people and just without a care in the world. Little did we know what was to happen, right? So what are some other people's favorite sections of the book or favorite parts about the book before we get into some questions? Anybody have a?
I love Sally's transformation from a proper English handmaid into an Egyptian woman. I just, when she bought the pants suit and I just loved seeing that gradual, it was slow, but, by the end of the story, she really, to me, was an Egyptian woman. And I love that.
Good. Other people? Parts of it that they liked or didn't like?
Joan?
There was one section that I saw, again, it was early on, and I'll just read a bit from it. What happens when you leave everything behind, when you leave everything familiar, not just houses and streets and wet, windy wintertime, but husbands, children's, friends? Does this mean I am no longer the same person? Does this mean that I too have changed? I just wondered, does that resonate, when we travel or actually when we, perhaps some people like move, emigrate or moved countries?
Yeah, that's a great section. I
Eric
remember.
had the same one marked.
And actually, can I say something? I have not read the book, but exactly that piece you read, it makes perfect sense or resonates with me because first I lived my entire life in Dominican Republic, moved to the States 14 years ago. And in 2016, I quit my job and went backpacking for a year and ended up doing 2 years. And that experience, overall, I've been to 70 countries. And every time you go to a new country, at the beginning, you're a little bit anxious and nervous and hoping everything goes well. But once you meet the people and you're open and you don't have expectations, you're greeted in a most beautiful way. Mm-hmm. And when you come back home, you realize, I feel like time froze. Like I came back to New York, because that's where I work pretty much. I work in the tourism office for New York City until pandemic came. And of course, that ended. And I have to say, coming back, I literally felt like time froze. And I time traveled for 2 years and I came back and everything was exactly the same. Mm-hmm. But how I felt inside, it was just so overwhelming but happy about it. And now considering what we're all going through, which is something I'm sure none of us ever expected, I am so glad I did that trip from 2016, 2018, because things that I experienced, who knows when we're able to experience again. Just being on a bus with people everywhere talking to you, being on a boat ride overnight, sleeping like everybody next to each other in Thailand, like trying food from someone that just hands you something. It's just so much that I think we took for granted, but I'm thankful that I got to experience that because we don't know how things will be, hopefully when things get better. So
right. Okay, good. So you've tied it into your experiences with someone's favorite passages. Does someone else have a favorite passage that they've used, that they saw?
I'd just like to comment on that same one because I kind of thought about that one as well, because I've done a lot of traveling, working in different places and living in different places. And it kind of, for me, I found it different. I found that things had changed when I got back. And it was kind of having to get used to that. for me, the bigger thing, it was kind of like, okay, I'm going to a different place and let's get on with it. What for me was the biggest thing was, because I worked on contract for a number of years, and it was kind of every time I finished a contract, which would probably be in a different place, it was kind of like, what am I going to be when I grow up? So that for me was the bigger thing, rather than worrying about what the place was going to be like or having to get used to it, because I found that I got into it quite easily when I moved to a different place.
So part of it is when we travel a lot, are we who we are, where we are, or are we what others thought of us where we were? That's the different, right?
Well, I think, can I respond to that?
Sure.
I think part of that is that when we're at home, we have particular roles and we have a history, and people have a history with us. When we travel, we're free agents. We leave those roles at home, and we can be totally open to engage from our heart, to engage however we wish with the environment, with the people. And there's nobody there who has a history with us. It's very freeing. It really is a great freedom.
Now, don't you think that also part of that freedom is what is in the book itself, is what changes the characters of Lady Gordon and, oh God, now I'm blanking on her name, Sally. Because they no longer, now they're taken away from their rigid roles and put into something completely different, where they can build a new role structure. And at least in the section where I was reading, they had really made that change. But then things happened. So the first question that I have is, why do you feel that Lady Duff Gordon cast out Sally so harshly? And do you think she felt betrayed? And did she really have an issue with propriety? Do you think Lady Gordon really had an issue with propriety? Why do you think she turned her out? Any thoughts on that?
I think she was jealous. Jealous that Sally had found somebody, jealous that Sally was going to have a child. She wanted to keep Sally for herself.
Interesting. Okay. Other people, other perspectives.
I thought she was hurt. I thought Lady Duff was hurt. She felt betrayed. She hadn't been honest with her after she had given her so very much. I think she was deeply hurt.
Okay.
I think if Sally had told her sooner, when she first got pregnant, that it might have been a whole different story. I think she was partly felt deceived by Sally's reluctance to say anything.
Oh, now following kind of along that line of thought, why didn't she treat Omar the same as she treated Sally?
No, that's a good point.
Okay, it was really quite different. And why do you think she was so certain that Sally tricked Omar into impregnating her?
Because there's a double standard for men, and there's a double standard for English versus Egyptian.
Definitely.
I didn't feel like that was real for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe I'm into this alternative realities, but I don't know. For some reason, I didn't feel like that was real, even though that was what she was saying. So I did wonder if she felt betrayed, but because Omar, I mean, I think that had something to do with the whole idea of servitude, and how when people are your servants, they remain your servants, I guess, for life. I don't know, because Omar, even after her death, she wasn't releasing Omar. She was promising him to somebody else. I mean, that seemed kind of, to me, not foreign, because it's similar to the idea of slavery. So it seems similar to servitude, and I don't know if it had anything to do with that or not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think thinking about the time that it was written in and the time that it took place, there were quite different roles in terms of servant and lady
I found it interesting that the control that she had over Omar and his refusal to let Sally live with the family near the end, I thought that was crazy because they were all willing to let her be with her son there.
Yeah.
And I still don't understand why he refused.
Didn't that have something to do with Lady Gordon? Didn't she say that she didn't want Sally to go live with his family? Wasn't that part of the deal? And wasn't he afraid of his job? He needed to have the income.
Well, and it's interesting because she did not want Sally to stay. Sally was to leave the country.
Yeah.
And so the fact that Sally disobeyed and stayed in the country was probably an affront. But she did also promise Omar that if he stayed loyal to her, she would promise him a job in a royal household, I think. And so I think he was looking for his future as well.
Yeah, and his family.
Yeah.
I think it had to do with control. Lady Duff Gordon wanted to be in control of everything, in control of Sally, in control of Omar, in control of both of their lives, in control of her own husband and family.
Well, no, that's
in that situation, she had control over nothing else but
Mistress of Nothing.
Sally
Yeah,
and
the title.
Omar, and then eventually Omar. Everything had been taken from her health, her husband, her young child, and Sally was getting all of that. So I think I agree with the fact that I think she was deeply hurt by Sally not being honest with her, but I think she was, that came right after the disastrous meeting with her husband that time too. Yeah.
So who was really the Mistress of Nothing?
Yeah, right. Oh, that's a good question. Yes, was it Sally or was it Lady Gordon? Now, we're talking about Omar. Should he have stayed as loyal to Lady Duff? I keep calling her Lady Duff. It's Lady Duff Gordon. And did he fail to protect his son in the right way?
Oh, I think so.
I don't think he had a choice.
No.
I don't think he had a choice.
His very life was in danger. Being in the household of Lady Duff Gordon protected him from being snatched up and sent somewhere too. So, yeah.
You're right. The threat of political involvement and all that sort of thing that was happening. She also gave him shelter of a type.
I just think he was an awfully weak man. I mean,
yeah.
Agree.
Yeah.
I agree with that. I felt like he was weak, and Sally showed how strong she was, at the end, and she just got stronger and stronger, and he kind of deferred. And Lady Duff Gordon, I know women like her. They try to control their whole family. Still exists. And if things don't go their way, they write them off like they never existed.
That's funny.
Sad to say.
But even though she treated her so badly, even though Lady Duff Gordon, she treated Sally so badly, she still performed one more treatment, right? Yeah. When she was sick. And before she was cast out of the house, I mean, she was already, isolated in her room, and she was cast from enjoying her life, but she came back in and she had one more treatment, and it could have been easy. She could have made the cut a little deeper. Was there a part of you that wanted to see her take revenge?
Yeah, well, Omar asked her to.
Asked her to take revenge, or to
no, asked her to do the treatment.
Yeah. It's true. Yeah.
I think the only part that I didn't like about Sally was when she actually went back to the lady and asked for money. And I thought, I couldn't figure out why she would do that, because by then she was already her own independent self, and she knew what she needed to do in life. And I think secretly she probably didn't realize that, or she did realize that she wouldn't get anything more from Lady Gordon. So I'm not sure why she would do that.
I think it was an act of desperation.
Well, you know, by the end of the story, is Sally still an English woman, or is she Egyptian? And considering her position at the hotel, is she really a mistress of nothing, or did she have a strong role there?
Yeah, well, she did. Yeah.
So, what do you think? And I think, Maria, you brought this up in the early part about she really made that transformation over time. And I think there's one section in the book when some people are whispering and saying, "Why, look at her! She could almost pass as an Englishwoman," right? And so I thought that was interesting that, you know, here she was going sort of full circle. But what do you think she was in the end? English, Egyptian, something in between?
She was Sally.
I kind of wondered at the end when Lady Duff Gordon died, did Sally then at that point go to live with her husband, or did she stay independent? I kind of hope to think she stayed independent at that point.
I thought he refused her.
It wasn't clear to me.
I think he refused her like towards the end, when he refused her, that was still when Lady Gordon was still alive.
Right.
But after Lady Gordon died, which is at the very end of the book, what happens next? You know, and part of that is the relationships within Omar's father's house.
Yeah.
You know, how, you know, the fact that the children are growing up together, and what commonalities you see between Sally and Omar's other wife.
I love that part. I just thought that their family opened up arms to her and they're like, whatever, come on in. Like, we love you no matter what. I thought that was great. And then proving another point that he is weak and his family was even stronger than he was, you know, that he just faltered every step of the way, and yet they rose above the situation and really kind of came through in the end.
I think he was scared that both wives got along with each other and the families accepted her, and he didn't know how to deal with that.
Yeah. Although in Egyptian culture back at that time, again, it wasn't unusual to have multiple wives and multiple families living together. And so, you know, that's something I think is hard for us to kind of grasp.
But he did say that she wasn't Egyptian.
Right. I think
wasn't part of the culture.
Right. The fact that it's one thing that have two wives, it's another to have an English woman.
Yeah.
I always wondered why she fell for him. It just seemed kind of out of the blue, like they didn't really have a courting. I don't know.
Well, you know, very, very early in the book.
Male.
Yeah. That's true. But very, very early in the book, she used to go to the museum and she would look at the statues and she would look at them. I mean, she kind of had this fantasy already, I think. And then this was this fantasy that she'd had from England coming true in her life. You know.
It's interesting because I haven't got very far into the book, but when Omar's first introduced, very first thing on my mind was, oh, they're going to get together.
Oh, really?
From the few comments. So.
I think I'm trying to decide. We're running a little short on time because we want to make sure we have time for Allison. So I'm going to try to decide what question to go with next. Why is Sir Alec put off by his wife's appearance and lifestyle when he finally visits Egypt? You know, she was so excited to go to see him, and he just kind of said, ugh, you know.
She was obviously no longer a traditional English wife.
Yeah.
And he still was a traditional English man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was
even in England, she had not been a traditional English wife. She was a little different, even in England.
Yeah, but I think she went way on the other side.
But the way that she was, can I speak? the way that she was untraditional in English was perfectly acceptable within their norms. But in Egypt, she took all kinds of liberties, from dress to the way she entertained. And I agree with Louise. Alec was way back in the headspace of English gentlemen. And this was not the English lady that left England. It was too much for him.
Yeah, but you know, I think also a lot of the story has to do with her illness and how people cope with, you know, with severe illness, and how, you know, there's many stories of men or partners that have a very hard time dealing with their partner when they're very ill like that, and basically, you know, reject them. And I felt like that was a part of that, of a thread there, that, like, to me, it was sadly predictable that he was going to treat her like that, you know, despite how much she really wanted to see him and be with him. But I kind of felt like I saw that coming.
If you think about it, her daughter was in Egypt, but her daughter was living the life of an English woman in Egypt, right? Whereas she was not living the life of an English woman in Egypt. She was living her own life. So just one last question, quick show of hands. Who liked the book?
Oh, I loved it.
Okay, I really like this book. And if you like this one, you will really like the next one. I promise you, I finished it. Like, I read this one like in a couple days and then immediately went to the next one. And so I think next month you'll like as well. Takes place in Brazil. But before we go on, I'm going to turn it back over to Carolyn, and she can introduce Allison, and we can talk a little bit more about Egypt today.
Yeah, and I have to say, thank you, Wendy, so much. Sometimes I feel like these book clubs could just go on for hours and hours, and so we can stay as long as you want. I have no plans tonight other than watching the Crown. But I want to introduce Allison, who's joining us. And Allison, you can maybe explain a bit about what you do, but I believe it's AAA exclusive vacations, and Allison is also a partner with a very long time partner of JourneyWoman's called Gusty Travels, and was kind enough to join us today and talk a little bit about Egypt. And I was hoping, after you say hello, that you could tell us a little bit about what's going on in Egypt these days, and give us kind of a state of what's happening there with COVID and entry requirements, or anything like that we might need to know, if we're thinking about traveling there in the future as well.
Certainly. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I feel terrible for stopping the conversation, because this has been awesome. I'm so impressed and inspired by all of you and your stories of travel, and I wish that I had the chance to read this book, and I would like to read it. And I think I'd like to read the next one and come back next time as a book club participant, if you'll have me. So thank you so much. And Wendy, wonderful job. I don't know if you were a professor or a teacher in your day, but you're excellent.
Thanks.
So my name is Allison. I am the managing director of a company called Club Adventures. We are part of AAA. So those of you who are American will know what that is. For our friends to the north, CAA is part of our organization as well. And Club Adventures was born 2 years ago out of the need for AAA travelers to travel a bit further and immerse themselves in the culture of the places where they travel. So often we can go and stay in fancy hotels and eat in fancy restaurants or take cruise ships here and there. But we don't really get to meet the locals and see what life is like. And I don't know Sally, and I haven't read about her, but it seems as though she made an Egyptian life of herself, and she really immersed in herself in that culture and created a friendship and commonalities with the people around her. And that sits with me. It's very near and dear to my heart, because it's what we strive for with our tours. Anyone can take you to a fancy hotel and to a nice restaurant, but we want to take you into the local market, or to the place where they're weaving things or painting or creating great art or doing great yoga. and sit down with those folks and really understand what makes them tick and find those commonalities and those connections between the things that we love and the things that they love. So part of Club Adventures is our WE program, which we call WE, which is Women Explorers. And these are our trips that are designed for women, by women, because we're women. But anyway, we've designed these special trips with female local leaders going to places like Egypt and many other destinations around the world, but taking that trip with a female perspective, so that you get to hear more about the female narrative within that country and uncover what it means to be a woman in any of these destinations around the world. So I have a short presentation around a trip that the Gutsy Travel ladies are going on next year with us. But I did hear some musings about Greece and some musings about beaches. So those things are on offer as well within the Club Adventures portfolio. So clubadventures.com is our website. My email is simply allison@clubadventures.com, and I'd love to talk to any of you about travel. I've been traveling the world since I was 23. I got hired by a tour company, and after 1 week of working in the office, got sent to Mexico, where I took a public bus through the Copper Canyon and wheeled my luggage back over the Arizona border. I spoke no Spanish at the time, so that was a baptism by fire, which then became my career. So Egypt was one of the destinations that I was so lucky to be able to visit. And when you travel down the Nile and you see both sides of the valley surrounding you, and you think to yourself, the world that we live in this hemisphere is so very young by our standards. It's beautiful, thank you. And the history and the stories that live in the valley and in all of the places within Egypt are just, you could spend a lifetime trying to uncover them.
Can I ask again, a raise of hands, how many people have been to Egypt on this call? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 5, 6? Yeah, okay. And Allison, do you have a handle on what travel is like to Egypt and from Egypt at the moment?
Well, currently from the States, we're a no-go at the moment, but that hopefully will change. Visa requirements haven't changed, and COVID rates there are relatively stable. But it really all depends on what happens on our side and whether we're able to travel without restriction on coming home. As countries have opened, Costa Rica is opening its borders in just a couple of days, Peru, Morocco opened for business travel. And it's not necessarily the getting there so much as it's the getting home and being able to, go about your daily life or see the ones you love without too much drama. Yeah. And it absolutely resonates with me. I don't know who said earlier that, when we traveled pre this time in our lives, we never thought this time would be here. And we were always thinking about the next place to go and where we wanted to be. And it just puts everything in perspective in terms of those past travel memories and having to think about those so lovingly now.
Does
putting
anyone
putting COVID aside, tell us something about the status of women in Egypt these days.
That's a great question, and I'm really glad that you asked it. One of the reasons that we partner with a company that we work with in Egypt and all over the world is that they have a female empowerment program within their company. And so many of their leaders, the Middle Eastern states, are female. And some of their stories are so excellent because as they began to step into this field that they always believed in and that they knew they could do, their families and their friends shunned the idea a bit. I have a great friend, her name is Zena. She lives a very similar life to me. She is a mother of 2, lady in her 40s, and she has had a fantastic climb in the tourism industry to become the director of her company there. And when she's taken some of the chances that she's taken in her life, it's been frowned upon by her family, but she has stayed the course, and she's absolutely incredible. So I think we're seeing more women than ever before step into those roles, driving transportation vehicles, acting as local guides, and doing so in a really incredible way.
Yeah, tourism is really important to help sustain that. One of the things we've been looking at is what countries will kind of need the most help with tourism in the future, and how can we as women support those countries, because in the end we're obviously supporting a lot of women in tourism as well.
It's so true, and I think, you know, we always wish there were more hours in the day, and I will certainly be studying the rippling effects of what COVID has done on so many levels to things like women taking part in the tourism industry, or women taking part in strides to better themselves all over the world through this time too, because we've all had to kind of go home and mind our own business for a while.
So why don't I show your slides, Allison? We can get a little bit inspired about where we might like to go in Egypt in the future. And I'm going to skip through some of these beginning ones that I put together, because Wendy did such a great job. This is obviously the Nile River and some of the places that were talked about in the book. And then some of the books that Lucie wrote. Oh, I did want to mention this. Sorry to back up here, but this is the French house. So this is the actual place that was written about in the book. That was a real place as well. It looks beautiful. I like to be there. That looks very peaceful to me. And then Allison, I'll just turn it over to you, maybe just to chat a bit about some of the things, some of the trips that you do. Are these slides showing up okay?
Sure. Wendy, I heard you, I saw you trying to speak. I think you were muted.
I was just saying that in the last slide where the picture of the French house, it looks like it would be a great place to be laying on a cushion, watching somebody dance and laugh and have eat and drink. So
yeah, absolutely. So on our particular Egypt itinerary, we're gone for 10 days. There's a really lovely little Alexandria extension that can be put on this program really easily. The Gutsy Women itinerary leaves right after Christmas of 2021 and stays over the new year. So those are the dates that they've selected. But as I mentioned before, there's plenty of opportunity to get there in a multitude of different ways. One of the things we say about Club Adventures, and particularly the WE programs, is that the highlights are the highlights and we wouldn't miss them because you have to do them. But the magic happens between the lines of the copy and the itinerary. So I can tell you that these are the highlights for the pictures that you'll take, but I can't tell you that they'll be the lasting memories that you come home with. I think those might be quite different with the people that you meet along the way. So we, of course, will go to the pyramids and we'll go to the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. And those days are absolutely incredible. And I think some of you have explored the Valley of the Kings, and anybody who would have been to that area would have done so. An absolutely incredible day, quite a bit of hiking, a little bit of dust, but so absolutely fantastic just to see. I had been twice, and to see what had happened in the Egyptology world between my visits was so incredible. And the groups of archaeologists and scientists that are working on these discoveries and bringing new stories to the front they're just incredible. And when you think about the centuries and centuries of history and the pharaohs and the time that they must have had. And what's so wonderful is as you're cruising the Nile, you're inherently thinking about what life must have been like during that time. And you're you're maybe laying out on the roof deck of the cruise boat, and got a hot tea and maybe a blanket, and you're watching the landscape pass you by and just thinking about all of the incredible history that's taken place there over time.
Yeah, lovely.
Our hotels are authentic in nature, but also prepared to give you the creature comforts that we all enjoy while traveling. So we do fly down to Aswan from Cairo. You can travel if you're a rugged traveler and want to go by overnight train, you certainly can. We choose to fly. It's a little bit quicker and a little bit more comfortable. So we stay in Aswan and at a lovely, lovely place. And I will tell you, one of my favorite memories from being there is riding on a felucca. And the feluccas are the sailboats within, around Aswan. And it's just an incredible experience that takes you back in time. Hookah bars are quite common, of course. Egyptian food, absolutely fantastic. I will share my own sort of young and silly story from my time when I was there. I was only about, I think, 26, my first time that I was there. And I was invited for dinner with a local family, and I was so grateful to go. And they had cooked some lovely local pigeon for us. So I was a first timer with my pigeon dinner experience. And I learned to eat with my hands, all of it. And it was just such a wonderful experience to be with the family, with their children. When we say family, or I say family here in suburban upstate New York, it's just the four of us. But when they say family in Egypt, there are many, many people under the roof and in the community. And I think that's one of the really special things about Egypt. The other thing I'll warn you about is my tea. I take unsweetened. They don't. So tea is really, really sweet. But I would love for you all to explore our itinerary, and I would love to talk to any of you at any time about anywhere, whether I've been or not.
Great, thank you. Any questions specific to Egypt that you might have?
I have,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I have a question about the tours that you do. I'm not really a tour person generally. In fact, I did my very first tour to Croatia about a year ago. And so it's kind of like, what is the profile of your tours? You know, the tour that I was on, most of the people were a little bit older than me. And so, you know, sort of we'd go out in the morning, and then you'd kind of stop for lunch and everybody disappear off for a lunch. And then you might have an hour after that, and then everybody's back to the hotel. Well, that's not my idea of kind of how to spend a day. You know, I want an awful lot more out of a day than that.
Sure. I won't be so bold to ask who you traveled with. You can tell me.
Senior Discovery Tours out of Toronto.
A couple things about our trips, and I worked for a major tour operator for a long time, so I feel you. I feel both sides. I feel the sitting in the hotel lobby wondering what's to come next. And I also feel the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. utter exhaustion of following around a guide trying to unravel the check boxes of visiting a place in a short period of time. So we try to do things a bit differently for those reasons at Club Adventures and with Gutsy Women Travel. And so first thing is our group size is quite small. So our average group size is only 10, maximum would ever be 16. That gives you more flow. It gives you more opportunity to get to know each other and to really have a journey within the journey. Secondly, I'm sorry? Oh, secondly is our local leaders. So as I was mentioning about Zena, she began her career as a local leader in Egypt. She will be your guide. She's from there. She knows the ins and outs, and what they're able to do is talk to you. You know, if it's a great coffee that you love, or if it's yoga that you love to do, or if you are an art aficionado and you'd like to see some local art exhibits that you might not hear about on Google, they can point you in the right direction. So one of the tenets of the products that we design is what's called travel unscripted. And that's built on the premise that the beauty happens between the lines of what we write for you to do on your itinerary. And that gives you enough time to make the trip your own. So the afternoon might be free, but there's so much to see and do, and your local leaders there to help you unravel that so that so you can make the trip truly your own.
And don't get me wrong, there was a lot of good things about the tour, you know, and the places that we went. So, and I spent extra time before and after on my own as well. So, but it was just like, for the days, I kind of expect more out of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
How far ahead do you find people are planning travel now? So that trip you showed us was a year away. Is that typical now with, you know, the increased complexity of travel?
Unfortunately, that's what is happening now. The majority of our bookings that we're seeing, I think the positive side of things is that we're seeing people with intent to travel, and that makes, you know, my heart continue beating. But they're booking into late summer, early fall and winter of next year, because the next 6 months are just so very undecided. And as travelers, we've kind of been jerked around a bit by travel plans changing, refund policies. I don't know if any of you have had trips that have been canceled or postponed, but it was painful there for a couple minutes, right? So we are seeing people book later just to get something on the books and have something to look forward to. The opposite that we're seeing more on the AAA side is that people are deciding, you know, things look okay today, let's leave on Saturday. So the places that we can go, the Caribbean, the Dominican, you know, internal within Canada or within the US, people are making those split decisions. I've had enough, it's time to go.
Yeah, I'm curious, by show of hands, has anyone got a trip planned in the next 6 months? No?
I was kind of hoping to go to Bermuda after Christmas, but we're in kind of lockdown now and there's no travel allowed, so.
Yeah. Well, I know we've got a little over time, so I just want to, I'm probably going to close this down a little. Thank you, Allison, very much for that great intro to Egypt. I'll put everything on the website so that that you all can access it if you'd like to look at it later. And I just want to mention we do have a session coming up on December 3rd that we're going to be talking about kind of the travel essentials. So looking at insurance and financial planning and kind of all those things you never really want to talk about, but are going to be more important for us to know going forward. Next Tuesday, we have a behind the scenes with Amanda, who's our editor, and she's going to be interviewing 2 women that were featured in our issue that just came out last week. So one is Tita, who's a beekeeper who lives in Vermont, and the other is Diana, who's written a few articles for us. Diana is, I believe, 85. And she's an amazing solo traveler and a real inspiration. And so Amanda's going to talk to the 2 of them. And for those who have not joined us on a community call, and there are several of you on this that come on our calls every single Friday, and we get together and we talk, you were invited to come join us. Maria, Wendy, Randy, we get together every
Mary
Friday
Clark.
morning. Sorry?
And Mary Clark.
Mary, didn't I say Mary? Of course. And Mary's also on our advisory committee, or on our advisory council at JourneyWoman. But every Friday morning we are together talking. We'd love you to join us and share what you're doing. And we have 2 other calls that happen around the world. One is West Coast, one is Indonesia. And you're welcome to join those at any time. And the last thing I will say before I let you go and finish your glass of wine is our last call for this year, which Wendy talked about, is Brazil, and that's on December 16th. And we'll be doing this book, State of Wonder, which I'm just about a third into.
It's good. It's a good one.
It's a little harder read than Mistress of Nothing.
But it all really starts coming together towards the end. Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Excellent. But anyways, thank you all for coming. And if you have any comments or questions, let me know. But I hope
Can I just say one thing to Allison? Just one thing, real quick. Allison, my very first tour was with Gutsy Women, and they are a nurturing group. And it was the first trip I ever took with just women. And I felt protected, safe, loved. And if anybody could take a trip with them, do it. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Marian. They are, it's an incredible group. I got to spend an evening with them in New York City last year, and they've been together for a long time. They're so welcoming to new people. They just folded us in and made us feel so welcome. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you, everybody. This was great. I really enjoyed it.
Hopefully we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good week.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.